The problem they all have is that when they were spending $7 trillion and the Republicans had retaken the House.
We all have a responsibility to make sure that the government functions. I don't think that the Republicans in the Senate want to shut down government.
And they were dead even in the Senate, so there was a possibility of a Senate filibuster or a House shutdown. They're all on record. Pelosi in the House, Schumer, the squad, how horrible it would be, how terrible it would be to shut down the government. That's what they said. And now the shoe's on the other foot, and now they're saying that's the only thing that can be done.
There comes a point when contradictions are no longer mere political posturing, but an outright insult to public intelligence. We have reached that point. When the government was spending trillions at an unprecedented pace, shutting it down was a reckless and irresponsible act, so we were told. Now, with a shift in political control, the same voices claim a shutdown is not only acceptable, but necessary. The selective outrage is as predictable as it is infuriating. But beyond the hypocrisy, deeper questions remain. How did we reach a point where a $100 billion budget cut is treated as a crisis, yet the reckless spending of $7 trillion barely raised an eyebrow? What does it say about our leadership when a strategy for controlling national debt, securing the border, or ending a war is either non-existent or deliberately obscured?
If you shut down the government when the doge people are trying to cut out superfluous positions after about 2 weeks and the government's still functioning, I think it's a bad strategy on their part to do that. Everybody's got to remember that the left is so hysterical about a paltry $100 billion in cuts. That's not enough. We're not even on schedule to save. We've got to get $1 trillion or $1.5 trillion, even to get close. And we're not getting there. But yet, if they're that hysterical about this small level of cuts in this huge budget, what do they recommend? They're not even faking it like Obama and Al Gore and Clinton. They're not even faking it. They don't have any solutions other than, I don't know, eliminate the Defense Department. That's Bernie Sanders' idea, I suppose. It's like, why don't they just say, look, we ran up $7 trillion and we're happy we did.
But reckless spending is only one part of the equation. Another is immigration, ignored, distorted, and repackaged as compassion while cities collapse under the strain. Yet the burden of this crisis does not fall on those who champion open borders, but on working-class Americans in overwhelmed cities and towns. Where is the accountability? Where is the recognition that all this was not an accident, but a choice? And yet, the most glaring contradiction remains unspoken. If this was always the plan, why not own it? If the goal was to reshape the electorate, flood sanctuary cities with undocumented migrants, and permanently alter the social fabric of the nation, then why not say so? Instead, the response is vague, evasive, and endlessly deflective.
We destroyed the border because we don't believe in borders, and we got 12 million really poor people, and we're alleviating poverty in Oaxaca, Michoacan, and Chiapas. That's what we wanted to do, and they're here in the United States now, and they'll be good Democrats in about 3 or 4 years. That was the plan, and we're not ashamed of it. And we don't believe that people should be responsible necessarily for shoplifting or taking things that are not theirs. That's their whole philosophy. And why don't they just say, you know what, this is who we are? Well, they did in 2024. And people said, we don't like you on the border. We don't like you on energy. We don't like you on crime. We don't like you on foreign policy. We don't like you on inflation. We don't like you on trans. We don't like you on anything. And they lost. We've only been here 8 weeks with the Trump counter-revolution. And it's like, oh my God, he deported somebody. Well, what do you think is the reason for that? Who let in 12 San Francisco? You people did, 12 of them. 12 1 million-person cities. And it wasn't 12 million dispersed over the continental United States. It was 12 million people flown into particular locales along the Texas-Mexican border, in the San Joaquin Valley, in the inner city. I saw them come in. I was at the Fresno airport on a late flight. I saw them come in. They came in with apps from Mexico. They just got on a little app, and they applied for asylum, and there was no diplomatic passport control when they arrived. I felt bad for them. They looked like some of the poorest people in the world, and they were coming in on 2 or 3 flights in the middle of the night, and there was no accident that flights from Mexico were scheduled at 1:30, 3:30 in the morning, and the airport took on a whole new life. It wasn't the people in Malibu, and it wasn't the people in Newport, Rhode Island. It was the other people who bore the consequences of their policies. And the same thing is true of the Soros crime wave. The same thing was true of borrowing $7 trillion and getting a hyper 9% inflation. Governor Newsom just announced that he doesn't have $3.4 billion in Medi-Cal, what we call Medicaid here, for illegal aliens, mostly. It's exhausted. And I could have said, if you'd gone 2 miles from my home to a big medical center and you had gotten there at 8 o'clock in the morning and seen the line, you would have seen why that is. Or if you'd gone to one of the specialists that I go to in Fresno and see the waiting room as compared to 5 years ago, you would have seen why. Do you think if Jill and Joe Biden had to, let's say, they had the flu and they wanted to go somewhere to get Tamiflu, and they went into the local ER, and it was like the Fresno County ERs, what would they do? Somebody would say, this is your policy, stand in line. And I don't think they would have said, well, who did this? I got to get my health care. And that's how this whole bicoastal elite functions. It's all based on, everybody is a lab rat. We experiment with all these ideas. And what do you expect? So I guess what I'm saying, Jack, is what is the alternative? He's cut off $100 billion. That's nothing. Nothing. We are borrowing $3 billion a day in interest. $3 billion. That would mean that every single day before Elon Musk can cut anything, he has to cut $3 billion to make up for the interest, which is about over $1 trillion. He's only done $100 billion, and the country is falling apart. I like the Wall Street Journal, Jack, but have you noticed that almost every article is negative now in the news section? People cutting back, delaying trips, cutting back, and then there's a little article below that says gas prices. I'm thinking, actually, gas is the lowest it's been in 4 years. Or why don't you say the consumer price index was much less than what everybody expected? And after, 8 weeks, you can't really have a policy. Another one is people sneaking in eggs from Mexico. And I thought, well, why don't you just have a little article that say egg prices have dropped $2 a dozen? Donald Trump was elected, rather than saying that there's an egg shortage, or why not say it was caused under Biden and it's getting better? But they never do that.
Beyond the domestic crisis, another question looms large. What is the actual plan for Ukraine? For over 2 years, the United States has funneled billions into a war with no clear endgame. The conflict bears striking similarities to World War I, an attritional slog with no apparent path to victory. And yet the official stance remains unchanged. Do whatever it takes. But what does that mean? Does it mean pouring in endless funds while the American economy crumbles under debt? Does it mean escalating toward direct conflict with a nuclear-armed Russia? The lack of a coherent strategy is alarming.
I wish when they start in on it, and they all do now, they would just tell us what the alternative is. And when they get on Ukraine, I just feel like saying, the closest historical model to what we see in Ukraine on a larger scale was World War I. No one in the Allied camp had any idea how to stop the German juggernaut. They tried at Verdun. They tried at Somme. They tried at Passchendaele. And after 2 million dead, Russia was knocked out. 500,000 German troops were transferred to the West. At that point, the only one thing stopped it. 2 million Americans were drafted and 1 million were sent in 1917 and early 19, and that stopped the German offensive. So my point is, if you think you're going to break up this Stalingrad or this World War I Verdun, what is your new technology? What is your strategy? Because I don't see the United States sending 2 million people over there. And unless you can come up with 10 divisions, NATO non-American aircraft, 2,000, maybe Sweden, Britain, France, they could all get together and send 1,000 jets and run surface air control. I don't know what they can do. They can ground support. But let's hear something rather than, we're going to do what it takes. We're going to go stand with the end. Well, what is the strategy? It's very easy to say that Trump doesn't understand Putin, that Putin is sneaky. We all understand that. But who was making any effort to find a resolution to this other than just give what it takes? We're $36 trillion in debt. Just send another $200 billion every year or so. 500 million Europeans screaming about a war of 140 million Russians attacking a country that's got no more than 30 million left, while they're all faulting and blaming a 330 million Americans 7,000 miles away. Doesn't make any sense. But I just want to hear something positive, that's all. Just a constructive, you know what I mean? Why doesn't the Wall Street Journal have a long essay and say, this is the strategy that will really lead to Ukrainian victory, recovery of the borders from 2022 or maybe 2014, a strategic resolution? This is how, why don't they do it? Outline it. This is how much more money we have to borrow, and this is how much it will cost each year. Just say that, but they don't.
It is one thing to critique the failures of leadership. It is another to offer solutions. And that is precisely what is missing from the national conversation.
Well, I mean, that's what Trump said he was going to do the first term. I'm going to bomb the proverbial SH blank out of ISIS. He did. He got rid of Soleimani. He got rid of Baghdadi. He got rid of the Wagner group. He got very little credit for that. The question is, why was he operating with impunity under the 4 years of the Biden administration? And the answer to that is, well, why was the Yemenis taking control of the Red Sea with impunity? Or why did we allow a Chinese balloon to go all the way to South Carolina before we shot it down? Or why were there two theater-wide wars under the Biden watch? I only mention that because I'm getting really tired of listening to all of this hysteria from the left.
And so, as the dust settles, we find ourselves at a crossroads of noise and truth. Will we continue to follow the shrill cries of those who, in their reckless pursuit, unraveled the very fabric of our nation, only to mourn when the consequences finally rise up? Or will we demand a reckoning, not just of budgets and borders, but of the very soul of a nation, drowning in division and despair? Victor Davis Hanson calls out, if hysteria is their anthem, and despair their creed, then who will write the next verse? History will not wait for the fearful to find their voices, nor should we.